Welcome, everybody. Come on in. This is going to be quick, so let's do it.
Listen, folks, I know there's a history here. I'd like to get this thing in today. You know, everybody needs to just focus on the relevant facts, okay? I know there's a history
Focus,
here.
people. Focus. Focus. Please stop focusing around here.
Are you talking up by Sunset Mart? Up the hill by the gas station?
Yeah.
Okay. Why did you? All right. Who's responsible here?
What's that?
Who's responsible here? Whose house is this?
Yeah, I've been drinking or
My
anything,
house.
right?
No.
Okay. Drive careful, okay?
Woo-wee. This is going to get interesting.
This is what the other group had that ran away.
Oh, really? You just ditched it? Awesome.
Yeah, those ones kept walking in the car and the other one.
It's truly for the win.
We'll take that one. That I was given to.
So there was two
Snow day
different
today.
discs. Okay, they all knew about it.
We're not here to talk about the alcohol stuff, okay?
Of course you're not.
But this is the second noise complaint we've had here tonight.
All right.
In 2 hours.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Is this your place?
Yeah.
Perfect. You know why we're here?
And ice noise.
Noise, yeah.
Yeah.
Big speaker right there.
Yeah.
Nothing against having a party. Once neighbors start calling in, then we have an issue.
All right, guys, welcome. Hopefully you guys got those notifications. It's kind of why I like the whole 2.5 minutes there. It gives you a chance to join us. All right, this one's going to be a quick one because then tonight you're going to come back and get like the lowdown of December 23rd when the wheels fell off the wagon timeline. Busy day for Moscow as well as the FBI. Everybody that was involved in this case, very, very busy day. So here we go. We're going to bring in the order that Judge signed addressing the IgG DNA in order for in-camera review. Okay. This is everything because we have an order. And not only what we get with an order is we get some background, and Judge basically tells us here, this is what I believe about the case. So remember when we had the DNA experts with the IgG testifying in August, we had an in-camera review, and then we had Judge's ruling on if the defense could get the IgG material. The state wanted to seal it, didn't want to give it to the defense because they said it had nothing to do with this case. They didn't use it in any of their search warrants, did not use it to obtain Bryan Kohberger's DNA, blah, 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 right? Great. So the introduction we're going to skip, but we are going to begin right here with the background. And on November 11th, as we know, the 4 students were they were found deceased and at the King Road house. The cause of death for each was ruled a homicide. While investigating the murders, law enforcement discovered a tan leather knife sheath lying on the bed next to Mogan. And that is from the affidavit of probable cause statement of Brett Payne. The Idaho State Lab later located a single source of male DNA, suspect profile, left on the button snap of the knife sheath. Once law enforcement had single source DNA from the K-bar knife sheath, they conducted what is called a short tandem repeat STR analysis. STR analysis involves looking at 20 regions within the human DNA. And they put that into CODIS to identify the source of the DNA. No match was found, and that is from, again, he's citing, Judge Judd is citing, that's the motion for protective order. Here we go. Meanwhile, this is how Judge understood it, okay? This is so important right here. Meanwhile, law enforcement continued to investigate the homicides, okay? We're going to get into that tonight. And the big question is what did law enforcement do between November 18th/20th and December 19th? But for this episode, they conducted a video canvass in the area of the King Road residence. Again, citing the probable cause, statements of Brett Payne. The video canvass revealed a white sedan that piqued the interest of investigators. The video footage was provided to a forensic examiner with the FBI, who initially identified the sedan as a 2011-2013 Hyundai Elantra, but later, okay, we now know when the but later, as far as the date is. Okay. But at the time, Judge did not know that. But later indicated it could be a 2011 to 2016. Okay. On November 29, 2022, this is where you get here, Judge becomes a witness, in my personal opinion, because you have Judge writing this right here. On November 29, 2022, Judge is under the, he's inferring that on November 29, 2022, after reviewing video footage and asking law enforcement agencies to be on the lookout for a white Honda Elantra in the area, a 2015 white Elantra registered to defendant Bryan Kohberger was located in Pullman, Washington. Judge isn't of the opinion that, oh, wait, you guys found that, but investigators in this case didn't know that yet. Okay? Just like how the probable cause affidavit is written, it makes it seem like we found out who Bryan Kohberger was because we saw this white vehicle. We gave it to the FBI. They said it looks like it could be a 2011-2013 white Honda Elantra, right? Then later they said, go ahead and widen that up. Okay? Making it seem like all of this happened before what? November 29th, 2022. After reviewing video footage and asking law enforcement agencies to be on the lookout. So on November 29th, you see the words on November 29th? He thinks that this happens on November 29th, which is that they locate in Pullman, Washington. So law enforcement knows this. Not just the law enforcement of WSU, but like Payne and the Moscow, Idaho agencies involved in this horribly tragic homicide, like the 4 stabbings, okay? Judge is of the opinion that on November 29th, just like all of us were of the opinion of that, anybody who would have read the probable cause for the arrest of Bryan Kohberger was of the opinion that they had on November 29th, Bryan Kohberger's name via finding the white Honda Elantra via WSU employees. Now, The state's case alleges that with this information, hence my arrows, everything up here, law enforcement determined that Kohberger's physical description matched that given to investigators by a surviving roommate of the victims, and that Kohberger's cell phone travel was consistent with that of the white Elantra in the early morning hours of November 13, 2022. Based on this information, law enforcement believed Kohberger to be the driver of the white Elantra that was seen on video surveillance around the King Road residence at the time of the homicides. Boom. It gets better. It gets better. Law enforcement also obtained cell phone records indicating that prior to the homicides, Kohberger's cell phone had utilized cellular resources that provided coverage to the area of 1122 King Road on at least 12 occasions prior to November 13th, 2022. On this, now look at what he skips here. He goes, look at the dates. Okay, because this is great. November 29th. Then, hey, the next date that we can talk about is on December 27th, because guess what? That's all the state was going to talk about. But how much is missing in between all of this? On December 27th, 2022, Pennsylvania agents recovered the trash from the Kohberger family residence located in Albright, Pennsylvania. But why did they recover the trash? Why did they recover the trash? Well, Anna, because there was DNA on the sheath and they wanted to see if it matches. Duh. Yeah, but were they just going around taking everybody's DNA and just seeing if it matched and running family trees for everybody and anybody that, knew the girls or Ethan? That evidence was sent to the Idaho State Lab for testing. On December 28th, the Idaho State Lab reported that a DNA profile obtained from the trash was that of a match, and it matched the DNA profile obtained from the sheath, identified as a male as not being excluded as the biological father of such a... Okay. On December 30th, Kohberger was arrested and charged with 4 counts of murder in first degree and 1 count of burglary. A search warrant for Kohberger's DNA was issued on January 5th. Now, on June 16th, 2023, the state filed a motion for protective order. So that's when you want to start looking at the documents. So everything I'm going to be talking about here is coming from documents that started once the state filed for that protective order. Next. Ready? In its motion, the state brings to light law enforcement's use of IGG. Brings to light. So there you go. Woohoo! This is when the public knows about it. To find a lead. After the STR DNA profile from the knife sheath did not return a matching CODIS. It is unknown to this court when exactly law enforcement employed the use of IGG. Okay? This is a court order. These are findings. Okay? Then he goes in to talk about what a brief discussion on IGG entails, okay, from both sides. And that is not needed to go over because we've gone over that. You guys should know what that is. Now, he goes over what then Ann Taylor's, Becca Barlow testified to. And the one thing that I did star here is that the use of this data, that these databases like GEDmatch does not necessarily lead to a single individual as a potential suspect. Now, investigators. The state describes law enforcement's use of IGG in this case as follows. Here's your first boom. Here is your footnote. At oral argument on August 18th, 2023, the court asked the state directly. The court asked the state directly if any information obtained from the SNP profile, the use of IGG, or the family tree created was used to obtain any warrant in this case. The state represented that it was not. The court has confirmed that nothing about the use of IGG or family tree was used in the affidavit to obtain the arrest warrant for Bryan Kohberger or in the affidavit to obtain the search warrant for Kohberger's DNA. Boom. This is what the court is under, okay? Well, why are you going after the trash at the parents' house? Wouldn't that be from IGG information? Now, going back to right here. The state describes law enforcement's use of IGG in this case as follows. The Idaho State Police utilized a private laboratory to develop an SNP profile from the DNA on the K-bar knife sheath. The private laboratory started using genetic genealogy to develop a family tree. But after law enforcement decided the FBI would take over, the private laboratory ceased its efforts and sent the SNP profile to the FBI. Emails, communication, dates. What's the dizzy dates? Okay. The FBI built the family tree using the same tools and methods used by members of the public who wish to learn more about their ancestors. The FBI also consulted subscription-based databases available to law enforcement for information on individual people. The FBI then sent to local law enforcement a tip to investigate defendant. Now known as December 19th, 2022. Let's go back. Meanwhile, law enforcement continued to investigate the homicides. They conducted a video canvass in the area of the King Road residence. Judge got that from the probable cause statement of Brett Payne. The video canvass revealed a white sedan that piqued the interest of investigators. The video footage was provided to forensic examiner with the FBI, who initially identified the sedan as a 2011-2013 Honda Elantra. Period. But after you got the IGG mofo, what'd you do? When was this identified? What's the date? I can tell you when the but later is. That's on 12/20/2022. But later indicated it could be a 2011-2016 Hyundai Elantra, which is in dispute because he said, no, I'm most comfortable not doing that. On November 29, 2022, Judge is believing that after reviewing video footage, what video footage? And asking law enforcement agencies to be on the lookout for white Elantra in the area, a 2015 white Elantra registered to the defendant Bryan Kohberger was located in Pullman, Washington. And that's why he needs to be called and questioned. And you need to ask him, were you of the opinion that Officer Payne and the rest of the world in Moscow Police Department little hub there, were you of the opinion that they had Bryan Kohberger via this? Absolutely they did. Otherwise, you don't have you're not going to get a search warrant, you guys. They're of the opinion, right here, it's clear as day. On November 29th, Judge, just like Megan Marshall, they were of the opinion that when you would be reading this and being talked to, that you have Bryan Kohberger because you found his vehicle and you were already looking for these vehicles. You found one with him, like this dude, who then matches the description. Now, this is why it's so important about the whole Dylan angle. Dylan is making it seem like this has all happened earlier as well. That because it says it right here. This is in his ruling. This is of his, what he believes, okay, based on the evidence. He's seen everything, right? That they had Bryan Kohberger and this white Elantra on November 29th because of the affidavit. Okay, that's what it says right here. That you had him. You found him. That this is how you really got to him. And that the FBI just provided the extra whoop. That's absolutely not true. Now we find out that it's not true. So if you want to sit here and say, no, Payne and Mowry and the rest of the department and the FBI were not misleading the tribunal, you're out of your fucking mind. They most certainly were, because it's right here in a goddamn order. So take that and shut up your fucking asses. Take that, mainstream media, and go talk about it. This is ridiculous. It's right here. This is an order. This is how Judge is saying that he learned that this is how the case went. This is not how the case went. And I wouldn't be surprised, you guys, that if once everybody was said to start looking for this white Honda Elantra, that these whole so-called queries that happened, let me explain to you what I think happened. And they're just saying, well, when did you put that in your database that you wanted a list of all the people that had white Elantras on campus? It's the same thing that Idaho would have done. Okay. So when we put it out there on November 25th, that be on the lookout for this, and that you would do what? You would type them into your little computer database to run a query on the campus to see who all owned white Honda Elantras, right? And you get this big old list, right? And so what I believe they are referring to when they want to say, and that's why Ann Taylor says, but you never talked to him before December 20th, right? There was no emails. Yeah, no. So you didn't know about, because it was a query, guys. They queried it. That just means they looked and they saw when a report was ran and who ran it. And so therefore now you can go ahead and say, if you go and actually look at the affidavit when it says that so-and-so ran a query. You know what that is? That's like anybody, I can go, hey, when were you doing such and such on your computer? Do you have a timestamp that you did this? Yep. Okay, we're going to use that. Because y'all put it into your databases, meaning the University of Idaho ran one too. Remember when they came out with that list, how many freaking Elantras were on campus? Who had an Elantra that had a parking pass? Remember that shit? This is what they're fucking doing. This is what they did. And this is crazy. But right here, it's clear as day. Judge is of the opinion, and based on the affidavit, everything he's read and what he's heard, and as all of us were, you had the car on November 29th. Law enforcement then provided that to Payne, okay? And that's why it's in his probable cause for the arrest of Bryan Kohberger. It's because we all thought that that's how you got to him. And that's why Jay Lawson says, well, what came first, the car or the IGG? So now, you want to go further into some bullshit? I'll take you further for those of you that want to stick around. As I said, on June 16th, the state filed their motion to protect IGG. In its motion, the state brings to light law enforcement's use of IGG to, quote unquote, find a lead. To find a lead. It is unknown to this court when exactly law enforcement employed the use of IGG. How in the world, in October 2023, October 25th, is a judge writing this in paperwork? You guys, this is insane. It is unknown to this court when exactly law enforcement employed the use of IGG. When did you employ it? Okay, when did you? And then, just because you told Idaho State Police, ready? Here's your guys' next bomb. Ready? Just because I tell you, hey, stop working on that, send it to us, or send it to the FBI, we're going to have them do it. That does not mean that they worked on it like that. Just because I tell you when to stop doesn't mean that that's when somebody started. Okay? Next. Then, the FBI also, IGG process pointed law enforcement toward defendant, but it did not provide law enforcement with substantive evidence of guilt. Of guilt. You just need probable cause. What are you talking about of guilt? So this is what's even better. So here they're admitting the IGG process pointed law enforcement to defendant, but it did not provide law enforcement with substantive evidence of guilt. Okay, so then what is? What is if it's not? What did they have that was before that? Before that, remember? Because the courts think that the November 29th should happen when November 29th was. Okay, now, notably, nothing about the SMP profile, the use of IGG or a family tree was used by law enforcement in obtaining the arrest warrant. Bullshit. Absolutely fucking shit. That is absolute shit. The January 5th, 2023 search warrant for Kohberger's DNA or any other search warrant in this case, and that is when, boom, daddy, thank you so much, Judge. At oral argument on August 18th, 2023, the court asked the state directly if any information obtained from the SNP profile, the use of IGG, or the family tree created was used to obtain any warrant in this case. And guess what? The answer that they gave was no, because of their timeline that they gave. Okay? But guess what? We now know that the timeline is a lie. They didn't have Bryan Kohberger's name and knew his car and were working on anything on November 29th, 2022. Like the judge thought they did. But it gets better. It gets better. The court has confirmed that nothing about the use of IGG or a family tree was used in the affidavit. The arrest warrant. Oh my God. Yes, that's such a lie right there. Confirmed for Kohberger or in the affidavit to obtain the search warrant for Kohberger's DNA. Well, unless you were taking everybody's parent and digging through their trash and putting it up to, everybody that owned a white Honda Elantra, then yeah, I would say that you definitely used the IGG. You were full of shit. Okay. Now, all the defense wanted that the state lost their minds over was we just want the material. So all reports generated by any of the labs, copies of the communication between the laboratory personnel and other persons of the organization, all documentation showed with databases searched, missing persons databases, and internal quality assurance databases. They just want the documents. We want how you got to our client. Who cares? You're allowed to use IGG, right? Everybody says you're allowed to use IGG, but you're supposed to disclose some of that stuff. We're going to talk about this in the affidavit of her at a later date. Next. In case law, the state claims that the IGG information will not be used at trial and was not used to obtain any warrant. Reiterates it. Okay. Now, they talk about 3 cases in here, and I'm not going to sit here and go through them, but I will talk about this. There is a reason that Judge was like, yeah, you can have all this shit. It's because right here, Bortry was able to cross-examine somebody during his trial at both the suppression hearing and at a trial about the process she used. Okay. So law enforcement was then able to check the vehicles. You guys, this is like to a T. You guys need to read this Ohio case. So law enforcement was then able to check the vehicles Bortry owned, et cetera, to find if he would be a good possible suspect. These are such old cases, meaning that like 18 years later, 30 years later, you're using this. That's when you're in using investigative genetic genealogy. In this case, the trial court found that the evidence did not establish any illegal activity by engaging in forensic genetic genealogy research. And the research did not, in fact, yield any substantive evidence that Bortry had engaged in any criminal activity. Rather, it merely narrowed the focus of law enforcement. Narrowed the focus of law enforcement. No. Do you see? That's why I left it out. In the Bryan Kohberger case, did the IGG narrow the focus? And to me, the answer is no, because it's the only thing that you had. So then that's why I'm fine with you using it. Just provide all of the information, because in the declarations of these expert scientists, genetic genealogists, they're simply saying, we need that information because we need to know how you did it so that we can see if there's any flaws in it. But you didn't want to cough up any of that information because you're allowed. There are so many cases that you're allowed to do what you guys did. In 1979, the victim was murdered. Years passed with no leads. In 2018, look at that. Law enforcement employed the services of a private lab, Parabon, to perform kinship and analysis, genetic genealogy on a suspect. Parabon directed law enforcement to investigate the descendants of 4 sets of great-grandparents. Not, here's the name, go and get their parents' DNA. Based on the information for Parabon and further investigation by law enforcement, police contacted, so like this is what's amazing. Police contacted an individual named this person and obtained her DNA. Then Parabon determined that suspect DNA profile was likely from Jancy's first cousin. Jancy had 3 first cousins, all brothers. Police collected DNA from 2 of the brothers via their trash. The DNA did not match that of the suspect profile. Police then collected DNA from a straw of the 3rd brother, Jerry. The DNA on the straw could not be eliminated as the major contributor to the DNA found at the crime scene. Police then obtained a search warrant for Burns's DNA, which matched the suspect sample. Do you hear anywhere in there using daddies and mommies? I don't hear anywhere in there being about daddies and mommies being used. Now, the opinion does not discuss any discovery issues or suppression issues surrounding the use of IGG. However, the facts of this case suggest at least some information, this is Judge, at least some information concerning the IGG was discovered to Burns, such as the private lab used, Parabon, the genetic genealogy service used, GEDmatch, and how the information obtained led back to Burns, i.e. law enforcement contact with, like, they disclosed this shit, which is all in the beginning anybody ever would want. So why aren't you just doing it? Why would you screw up a case? Because then here's where we get to the big part. Dun, dun, dun. Because you chose to railroad a motherfucker. You chose to pile it on by saying the cast and the phone and the travel of the car, that they were all aligning. That was all a bunch of bullshit. But that's what you said so that you could say that you didn't use IGG. And you made it seem like to the tribunal, aka Judge, aka Megan Marshall, that you found that motherfucker on November 29th. And you didn't. You guys ran queries, like I was saying on my channel back in November of 2022, or not November 2022, but December 2022, once we found out that you guys were looking for cars, I said, well, when I went to the University of Cincinnati, we had to get our cars, if we wanted a parking pass on campus, we had to give the make, model, and year. So why aren't they just running queries on both of those campuses right there? Ta-da! You would. Like, that would be the first thing that you do. And that's what they did. They ran those two queries, and then what they're doing is they're saying that they're using those dates that would have happened at WSU as some, like, that just because WSU did that. Think about this. You didn't have it, though. You didn't have it, right? So it wasn't like then you sat down at a table and was like, let me go through all these names and let me see if any of these pictures of these driver's license match hairy, bushy brows. Okay? Everybody can get straight fucked in Idaho because Lana's coming. Join me tonight. Rewind it. But Judge then says, basically, without this information in the record, there would presumably be no mention of it on appeal. So, like, just showing. Then talks about the State versus Hartman case. And then it's just great because it says, okay, while the case does not include specific information about what information was contained in the search warrant for Hartman's DNA or what evidence the state intended to use at trial, it is clear that Hartman was provided discovery on the genetic genealogy investigation and prepared a suppression motion as a result of that information. And that's exactly what Ann has done. Okay? That's exactly what Ann has done. Okay? In Idaho, according to Criminal Rule 16, which has everything to do about discovery, supervision of discovery is a discretionary power of the trial courts. And it's always been like that, but let me tell you guys something. When you want to talk about discretion, God, please vote local, man. Our judges have so much discretion. The state's argument is that, one, the IGG information is not discoverable under Idaho Rule of Criminal Procedure 16, and 2, if the information is discoverable, good cause exists for the courts to issue a protective order denying discovery of the IGG information. Please see state's response to defendant's third motion to compel discovery at the second paragraph. If the court finds that the IGG information is relevant to guilt or punishment, the state is simply asking for an opportunity to provide additional information to the court in camera. Why? When are you going to provide this additional information? Okay. So the court can decide whether the information that the state seeks to protect contains exculpatory information. Then the defense argues that the IGG information that they are seeking definitely falls within the rule, and that Kohberger definitely has a right to discover and question the investigation that led to him. That's what they've been saying the whole time. All right. Defendant is charged with killing 4 people. This is what the state's argument. The state argues that IGG information is not material to the preparation of the defense because defendant is charged with killing 4 people, not with being related to a particular person. Get fucked for that. You think that's funny? That's snark right there. You think that's funny? The mere fact that uploading the completed SMP profile into a public available genetic genealogy service led law enforcement to relatives of defendant. That does not affect the strength of evidence against him. Oh, it doesn't? Okay, then why are you guys flipping nuts about it? Why you got your panties all twisted? Jennings, Thompson. Why are you trying so hard to keep if it ain't nothing? Who cares? The family tree built by the FBI merely pointed law enforcement to defendant, merely pointed to him. And law enforcement followed that lead to develop the substantive. What's substantive evidence? That's what I think is hilarious. What? The substantive evidence of guilt that was used for his arrest and that will be used at trial. And what is that? The state contends that only relevant DNA evidence, which remember, they haven't even disclosed what experts they're using. Okay, what report? No, they've said what experts for DNA they're using. They have no reports to this day right now. And look at them, tiz whizzing. The state contends that the only relevant DNA evidence is the DNA found on the knife sheath. Well, no shit, Sherlock. Thank you for pointing that out. That's the only relevant DNA. You guys want to see that again? The state contends the only relevant DNA evidence in the DNA found on the knife sheath and the DNA taken directly from Kohberger, because those DNA profiles can be directly compared and, according to the state, matched. The defense argues that the IgG information sought is material to the preparation of the defense because the defense must have an opportunity to challenge how the IgG profile was created and how many other people the FBI chose to ignore during their investigation. The processes used in this method of identification may be extremely important to Mr. Kohberger's defense. The timing and steps utilized are extremely important to Mr. Kohberger's case. Investigation and defense, says Ann Taylor in her declaration. Without access to the actual genetic genealogy search methods and results, it is impossible for qualified experts to address these issues. Couple last bangs here. Based on this low threshold of material, because federal courts' decisions have described materially as follows, okay? And Kohberger has presented enough evidence to meet this low threshold required to show at least some of the IgG information sought is material to the preparation of the defense. First, the defense presented the declaration of Becca Barlow, as well as testimony from Barlow at the August 18, 2023 hearing. Barlow opined that, in quotes here, it is imperative to the defense in this case to know how Mr. Kohberger was identified and who else in his family tree might have been identified as a subject of this investigation. It is unknown to the defense in this case whether every lead or possible suspect was further investigated and ruled out by genetic testing. It is not possible for any defendant to investigate family relatives who are unknown to him and may in fact have been in the area of the crime. Boom. The defense seeks this information to determine whether Kohberger was or is the sole suspect. Now we found out that there were alternative suspects. Additionally, like in the Hartman and Bortree case, it is plausible that Kohberger may use the IGG information obtained in discovery to challenge the admissibility of other evidence. That's exactly where we're at right now, folks. Do you know how long it has taken us to get here? Because the state made the decision to just not comply with Rule 16. Made the decision to challenge everything because we're not going to turn it over because we don't have to. We don't have to. Okay, that shows me how much you care about the families right there. If you got it by the nuts and your case is so golden and the law and case law represents that, hey, you're allowed to use genetic genealogy, okay? You 100% are allowed to do that. Why are you dragging this out for the families? This is where we're at right here. This is where we're at in the case, if you ask my opinion. We are now challenging, right? Because thanks to Judge saying, hey, guess what? You thought November 29th was the day they found Bryan Kohberger in the car and all that shit, right? Just like we did, right? Just like the affidavit portrays, right? Well, come to find out, no. They didn't have Bryan Kohberger on November 29th, 2022. There was nothing in their path that was leading them to Bryan Kohberger. Nothing. And in fact, then they had to go back and get an FBI expert to try to change his opinion of the vehicle that was seen outside the home where the murders happened. After you had his name. After you had his name, you had to go get that FBI expert. Could it be a 14, 15, or 16? After you had his name. Judge is thinking that the WSU cameras were being utilized in that area November 25th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 29th, after that 30th, then December 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th. Just like all of us thought. Because the probable cause affidavit presents itself that way. Well, such a challenge seems, look at this, ready? Futile. While such a challenge seems futile, since the IGG information was not used to obtain the search warrant for Bryan Kohberger's DNA and will not be presented at trial by the state, the court cannot say with certainty that the defense team could not make a successful challenge if given the information they seek, and they now have it, and now they did it, and they're making a successful challenge. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us. I said I was going to keep this right around 45 minutes. Join me tonight. I will be going over all of the rest of this in its more entirety, but 100% Judge was of and on the same boat as all of us, just like Megan Marshall was, that they had Bryan Kohberger on November 29, 2022. That is what he thought. That is what Megan Marshall thought. They were deceived by none other than Payne and that prosecutor Jennings. And if you don't think that's prosecutorial misconduct, I don't know what is. Peace.
Like brains, and like if you need a lot of brains, you're gonna be in trouble.
This November 29th, 4 people that were murdered, and you want to fuck around. You got 8 families that are being affected by this, and they just mean nobody from the universe.
Shock value. And so what he did was he had taken pictures of California.
Oh, you're from I would be outraged if I live in Moscow right now. I'd be lighting some cars on fire out there. I'd be flipping some cars. I'd get the frats going wild with me. Let's get some noise complaints going.